You know that feeling when you're watching a car crash in slow motion? When you can see disaster approaching but you're powerless to stop it? That's exactly what millions of viewers experienced on what should have been an ordinary night of British television. But here's the thing about live TV, it doesn't care about your reputation, your royal bloodline, or your carefully crafted public image. And Prince Harry was about to learn that lesson the hard way. Picture this, the iconic red couch, the studio buzzing with that familiar pre-show energy, and cameras ready to capture what everyone assumed would be another charming celebrity interview. After all, this was supposed to be Harry's moment, his chance to reconnect with the British public during his visit to commemorate the Invictus Games' 10th anniversary. His PR team had orchestrated this appearance down to the smallest detail, hoping to show the world a more relaxed, approachable side of the prince. But television is a merciless beast, and sometimes the most carefully laid plans crumble under the studio lights. Graham Norton, the undisputed master of British chat shows, welcomed Harry with his trademark warmth. The audience was electric, genuinely excited to see the prince back on home soil. For the first few minutes, everything proceeded exactly as planned. Norton's opening banter was gentle, almost protective, questions about jet lag, California weather, the usual celebrity small talk that puts guests at ease. Then something shifted. Maybe it was the way Harry's answers felt rehearsed, or perhaps Norton sensed the audience's hunger for something more substantial. Whatever the catalyst, the conversation took a turn that would change everything. When Norton casually steered toward the Invictus Games, Harry seemed to relax, clearly in his comfort zone discussing his beloved project. That's when Norton struck with surgical precision. "So Harry," he began, that familiar mischievous glint dancing in his eyes, "will you actually be attending the 2027 games in person? Or should we expect another heartfelt video message from your Montecito mansion?" The audience chuckled. It seemed harmless enough, just typical Norton cheekiness. But Harry's smile faltered for just a fraction of a second. And Norton, veteran of thousands of interviews, caught it immediately. The host leaned forward slightly, his voice carrying that deceptively casual tone that signals danger to anyone who knows him well. "You know, it's fascinating how some people can create something truly remarkable and then just disappear, like ending a relationship by text message." The laughter grew louder, but it had an edge now. Harry's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Then came the moment that would be replayed millions of times across social media. Norton paused, let the laughter die down, and delivered the line with perfect comedic timing. Maybe he's just worried that if he shows up, people might actually salute someone else for a change. The silence that followed lasted maybe 3 seconds, but it felt like an eternity. You could practically hear the collective intake of breath from the studio audience. Then the dam burst, not polite television laughter, but genuine, unrestrained howling, the kind of laughter that cuts through pretense and hits raw nerves. Harry's face transformed, the practiced media smile vanished, replaced by something much more primal. His cheeks flushed deep red, and for a moment, he looked like a cornered animal. He glanced frantically off stage, clearly searching for some kind of intervention from his team. When none came, he attempted damage control. "Well, you know, scheduling with family commitments can be quite complex," he stammered, but his voice lacked conviction. The audience could sense weakness, and the atmosphere in the studio shifted from entertainment to something approaching bloodsport. What happened next will go down in television history. Harry stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor with an audible screech. Without a word, he reached for his lapel mic and yanked it off, the tiny device clattering to the ground. The studio fell dead silent. Even Norton looked genuinely shocked. For a man who had witnessed countless celebrity meltdowns, this was unprecedented. Harry shot Norton one final, withering glare before turning on his heel and storming toward the exit. His footsteps echoed in the stunned silence as he disappeared behind the velvet curtains, leaving behind a studio full of bewildered faces and a host who, for perhaps the first time in his career, was momentarily speechless. Norton recovered with characteristic grace, breaking the tension with a perfectly timed quip. "Well, that's the first time someone's left without saying goodbye since my ex-boyfriend." The audience laughed, but it was nervous laughter. Everyone knew they had just witnessed something extraordinary. Within minutes, the internet exploded. Social media platforms couldn't handle the traffic as clips of the incident spread like wildfire. The hashtag #HarryStormsOut began trending globally before the show had even ended. Twitter was flooded with reaction videos, memes, and hot takes from royal watchers, celebrity commentators, and ordinary viewers who couldn't believe what they had just witnessed. The British tabloids went into overdrive. Prince Tantrum screamed the front page of The Sun. The Daily Mail's headline read Harry's humiliation, Duke storms off after Norton jibe. Even the usually restrained BBC couldn't ignore the story, with their royal correspondent describing it as an unprecedented breach of television protocol. But the real story was unfolding behind the scenes. Sources close to the situation revealed that Harry's team was in full crisis mode. The prince himself was reportedly inconsolable, feeling utterly betrayed by what he saw as an ambush. One insider claimed he spent hours replaying the incident, obsessing over every word, every laugh, every moment of his public humiliation. He thought this would be a soft landing, revealed someone familiar with the negotiations. His people specifically requested that Graham keep things light and positive. But you can't script Norton, that's not how he works. Meanwhile, back in California, the silence from Meghan was deafening. Her usual supportive social media posts were nowhere to be found, and her spokesperson offered only a terse no comment when pressed by journalists. Some interpreted this as strategic distance, others as quiet fury at Harry's decision to appear on the show against her advice. The royal family's response was equally telling in its absence. Buckingham Palace issued no statement, offered no support, and maintained their characteristic silence. But palace insiders painted a picture of barely concealed satisfaction at seeing their predictions about Harry's volatility proven correct. The real damage, however, was being felt where it mattered most, among the veteran community that had embraced Harry's Invictus Games vision. Social media was filled with disappointed messages from wounded warriors who had seen their champion crumble under the pressure of a simple joke. One former serviceman's video went viral. "We needed strength, not sensitivity. We needed leadership, not tantrums." Corporate sponsors began making nervous inquiries about the 2027 games. Television executives who had planned to cover the event started having second thoughts. The carefully constructed narrative of Harry as the people's prince, the veteran's advocate, the voice of modern monarchy, it was all unraveling in real time. Perhaps most damaging of all was the broader symbolism. Here was a man who had served his country with distinction in Afghanistan, who had created a globally respected platform for wounded veterans, who had once been the most popular member of the royal family, and he had been laughed off his own nation's television screens. The incident raised uncomfortable questions about Harry's future in public life. If he couldn't handle Norton's gentle ribbing, how could he navigate the far more hostile waters of international diplomacy or serious advocacy work? If a joke about saluting could reduce him to a tantrum, what did that say about his emotional resilience? Entertainment industry insiders began whispering about the Sussex brand's viability. Netflix executives were reportedly reconsidering their partnership, while Spotify had already parted ways with the couple months earlier. The golden couple who had once commanded eight-figure deals were beginning to look like damaged goods. Yet perhaps the most profound impact was on Harry himself. Friends described a man grappling with the realization that his carefully planned comeback had backfired spectacularly. The boy who had once charmed the world with his rebellious streak had become a man who couldn't laugh at himself, even gently. As the dust settled, one thing became crystal clear: this wasn't just a failed television appearance. It was a cultural moment that crystallized years of growing public skepticism about Harry's transformation from beloved prince to Hollywood celebrity. The British public, it seemed, had finally stopped caring about his feelings and started caring about his actions. Norton, meanwhile, continued his show as if nothing had happened, interviewing his remaining guests with his usual aplomb. When asked about the incident afterward, he simply shrugged and said, "Sometimes the truth hurts, But that's television. The cameras may have stopped rolling, but the consequences of those few minutes of primetime television continue to reverberate. Harry's attempt to reclaim his narrative had instead surrendered it entirely to the court of public opinion, and their verdict was swift and merciless. What makes this incident even more devastating is the timing. Harry had spent months crafting his return to British soil, carefully selecting events and appearances that would showcase his growth and maturity. The Invictus Games anniversary was supposed to be his safe space, his unassailable achievement that even his harshest critics couldn't diminish. Instead, it became the backdrop for his most public humiliation in years. The ripple effects extended far beyond entertainment value. Political commentators began questioning whether Harry's emotional volatility made him unsuitable for any future royal duties. Should reconciliation ever be possible? Conservative MPs who had previously remained diplomatically silent started making pointed remarks about representative behavior and dignified conduct. The incident had inadvertently strengthened the palace's position that Harry's departure from royal duties was not just inevitable, but necessary. Perhaps most telling was the reaction from ordinary Britons who had once cheered for him. Social media was flooded with comments from people expressing genuine sadness at watching someone they had once admired reduced to a petulant outburst. "This isn't the Harry we fell in love with," wrote one longtime supporter. "The boy who walked behind his mother's coffin deserved better than this." The transformation from beloved royal rebel to polarizing celebrity seemed complete, and the public mourning for the prince they had lost was palpable. In the unforgiving world of live television, Prince Harry learned that respect isn't inherited. Forgiveness isn't guaranteed, and sometimes the most dangerous enemy is your own inability to laugh at yourself. The red couch had claimed another victim, but this time, the casualty was a prince who forgot that in the land of comedy, everyone's fair game.